my pleasure to be bringing you the X-Men animated series X-Men 97 Marvel Extravaganza with some iconic people. First up, this gentleman was the first African-American storyboardist in animation. He was the first African-American hired by Stan Lee. He is an Inkpot Award winner, director, artist, producer, Larry Houston. Come to the stage. Next, we have Lydia Dietz, the only other to ever carry that mantle besides Winona Ryder. She is also a legend in the Resident Evil world. She is the heroine of the Big Comfy Couch. And when she's not wearing her nose, you can catch her as Absissa or Jubilee. Alyson Court, come to the stage. You might not want to lock arms or hands with this devilish, brilliant woman, but she is a career politician, philanthropist, humanitarian, and she looks good on the cover of a magazine. Ladies and gentlemen, Lenore Zann. You can't have the Southern Belle without the charming Cajun. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him from Kung Fu, from Heartland, Silk Stockings, Gambit himself, and Cable. If you get a telekinetic feeling, it's because our next guest has been the original voice of Jean Grey and the Phoenix. You also know her from The Good Witch. You know her from Resident Evil as well. Jill Valentine, when she wants to be today, she is here as Jean Grey. Catherine Disher, come to the stage. So many iconic roles played by this gentleman. He stepped up to the mantle of Magneto and did an incredible job in X-Men 97. The heart of the show, was he right? I think he was right. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Waterson, come to the stage. And lastly, to have one episode mean so much to an audience and a generation, to have such an arc with Wolverine, with Rogue, with the hateful townspeople, and then when X-Men 97 rolls around, he's swinging swords with his tail, he's battling everybody under the sun, he wears his priest outfit, his faith is strong, his swordsmanship's even stronger. Ladies and gentlemen, Adrian Hough! Marvel's made a lot of money off these folks.
My childhood!
Yeah, exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Larry Houston here, who was bringing in some iconic X-Men to the show, and then they said, oh, why don't you try some new ones like Rogue and Gambit, which at the time you were kind of able to set their history, make their history. Larry, talk a bit about that.
Well, back when we... I didn't think. Aim it that way, so okay. No, back when we were first starting the show, the original characters that were part of the original team was Colossus and Nightcrawler, and Marvel East had these brand new characters they wanted us to introduce into the show, which was Gambit and Rogue and Jubilee. So we had to, Marvel kind of like overrode our decisions, but they brought in these new characters, and we basically took those characters and gave them brand new personalities. We wanted to make them interesting to the world, and luckily we were able to cast some excellent voice actors who brought life to all the characters and made them work and live forever in your entertainment.
So, a lot of times actors are the last to know about creative decisions. Kathy, when you're reading that Jean is piloting the shuttle to Earth and trying to save the whole crew, and then you're becoming the Phoenix, are you like, well, Jean was fun, I guess that's over, or what kind of...
Yeah, but they keep dying and coming back to life, and dying and coming back to life. So, yeah, it was a surprise every time you got a script, because I didn't know anything about X-Men, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say that was the third season, all the Phoenix stuff, and I really wasn't still up to speed. So, no, it was kind of a remarkable surprise every time a script came across. And I used to use those scripts. I realized I only kept a few of them. I used to give them to my son, who was like 3 or 4 at the time, to use for, drawing on the back. So I had stacks of X-Men scripts. I wish I'd kept them. But, and only the white versions were good for drawing. When it got to the color like green, blue, pink, it was like, no, we just threw them out. Hey. I know, it hurts now. By the way, you can be whoever you want, apparently. So I'm Richard Pardo. I just want you all to
know. No names.
Alyson, I know we've talked so many times about so many aspects of your work on the show, but can you talk a bit about auditioning for Jubilee, finding this wonderful fish out of water story in that pilot, finding the emotion, which was, a wonderful challenge, in dramatic chops and really selling that to the audience, because if we don't care about that character, we're not hooked into the show.
Can you repeat? Well, there's a lot of pressure. Actually, that kind of reminds me of the speeches we would be given when we would go in to record that first season in those first few episodes. Like, there were a lot of speeches like that because they kept saying, we're not making a kid's cartoon here. And we'd look at each other and be like, is this not animated? I thought we were making a cartoon. Like, what's going on? And then Sydney Iwanter would be like, you don't understand. This is Shakespeare. This is blah, blah. And you would go on his tirade, and it was like, dude, I'm like, I'm trying to do a thing here. So there were at least as many people in the control room as there were actors in the ensemble at any one given time, and the gyrations and gesticulations of the people that we could see in the control room but not hear kind of put that into us. We were like, all right, we better take this serious and dig deep and find something, and we did. We did. I mean, I think they put the fear of God into us, and that's how we found our characters. But it was worth it.
Yeah, and your character, Jubilee, was the character we needed to introduce the X-Men to the world by using Jubilee as like a character who has no idea what anything's going on. And all hell breaks loose as this giant robot's trying to capture her. She gets saved by Cyclops, knocked out, wakes up in the mansion, like, where the hell am I? And as she goes through the mansion discovering all these people with these weird powers, and she finally gets explained what's going on with Storm, it was a natural way of having exposition to explain, as they explained to her, she explained to all of you guys who already know the X-Men, but it was more important to get it across to the whole audience. And that's what helped make the show accessible to the entire public.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
It was such a good storyline that they stole it for the first movie live action and gave it to Rogue.
Yeah, Bryan Singer said he never read an X-Men comic book. He only watched my show.
Oh, wow. So, Mr. Chris Potter, you've made Gambit an icon, and I'm just curious, when you're first getting your feet into the shoes of the character, on page 3 or 4 of the pilot, there's a giant robot attacking them all the girls are trying to kick ass and save the world, and you're flirting with a clerk at the gift shop. What's your first thought when your intro scene is just dropping some swag?
Oh, I wrote that storyline. Well, Alyson just reminded me of something I completely forgot about, which is that as a group, we first of all, we recorded as a group the first few episodes in the first season. And because our mics were spilling, our voices were spilling into other mics, we had to start to do our characters on our own. So those first few episodes were hilarious, first of all, because there were a lot of funny men and women in the room, and a lot of people could do impersonations. At one point, they needed a Jack Nicholson impersonation for some peripheral character, and everybody wanted to make the extra money. Except I don't do impersonations, so I sat back and watched Cal Dodd do his Jack Nicholson, and then Norm Spencer go, "That's not Jack Nicholson, this is Jack Nicholson." And then the 3 people in the room are doing impersonations. I just thought, this is fantastic, I'm loving this. But what Alyson said, I forgot about. I wonder why I was always so insecure when I was doing the role. And now I do remember being in that walled-off studio, glassed off, seeing a lot of talking going on by the board. And they're all doing this. And talk about fanning the flames of insecurity. Just staring through that glass going, I am dying here. And then they'd say, okay, Chris, you get hit in the chest with a laser beam and blown back 200 yards into a car. And action. And, so it takes a lot of creative people to make all this stuff up. And you got to believe in it. And I think there was a lot of pressure at the very beginning, so none of us really knew if we were doing well. And in fact, even once we were doing well, no one ever told us. And it wasn't until about 25 years later that we all got a phone call and said, we're putting the band back together.
So Matthew, you've got multiple costumes, you've been chained up like Jesus, you've got quite a run this first season.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when they said, you've done an incredible job of the gravitas of David Himblum while creating your own stamp on Magneto, and especially because we never saw him.
No, but nobody ever said that.
I think I did.
You might have said that, nobody else ever said it.
The arc is so great, and I'm just curious, as an actor, do you like to kind of know where it's headed, or do you like to play everything out sort of episode to episode?
I had not, the way that the process works, when we started, I had, gone back and watched the original 5 seasons, but I didn't have any art or anything like that to see of the character of any difference. And I was told that they were going to the new costume, and I was told, what it was and what it was from so that I could find it. So I went out and got that issue so that I had an idea on what it was. But I didn't see any art until I think I'd probably been recording for 9 months. So it was entirely based on just listening to production, and they say, well, this is what's happening, and you just have to trust them. So there's a lot of, and as I was saying, originally they recorded as a complete cast. Now the cast is all over the country. We have people on the East Coast of Canada, the West Coast of Canada, and California, all over the place. So everybody is recording on their own. So you don't even get the other people to play off. You just have to trust that when the director says, well, for this, we need you to make this adjustment because this is what the other person is doing or has done or we're going to direct them to do. You just have to put your faith in the director and the producers that they know the show they're making. And they seem to know the show they're making.
We have a director called Meredith Lane who's just phenomenal, and she always puts you right into the zone.
And Meredith was also the person who cast it. So Meredith was the one who found people who had as Alyson Smith has said, like, she was in another country and she got a message saying Disney wants to talk to you, and she just assumed it was a prank. So Meredith had to find people and to get, as Chris said, the band back together, and then had to find for people like David or Norm, who were no longer with us, how do we find people to plug in that are going to work with the cast?
And speaking of plugging in, your household is a double mutant, so to speak. Miss Wonder Woman, Rachel, is also Cable's computer voice, his AI construct, correct?
Yes, she is. Yeah. So Chris has already spoken to my wife, and
News to me.
it was news to me too. She was like, "That's me," and I went, "That was what you're doing?" She goes, "Yep." You didn't even tell me. She goes, "I know." I said, "I tell you what I do." She goes, "That's because you don't honor your NDAs."
And I've done scenes with you, and you were in a speedo, no less, and we just met for the first.
Honestly, I'm always at the speed.
I had no idea.
Getting dressed, going back clothes rooms today. So
And Magneto's hair, the way his hair.
Yeah, he looks like a Vidal Sassoon commotion from FanX. Like,
But just so you know, Matthew, actually, it isn't just Byron that said that. Catherine and I met at the airport yesterday in Toronto, and we were talking about the new series, and both of us said the new Magneto is awesome.
Yeah.
So that was part of
We
our...
have a Magneto right there. Would you just stand up and take some awesome So, Adrian, there was one adjustment, which is the fun, the lightheartedness that Nightcrawler gets to engage in this series. And because there has been some time has passed, you can assume maybe from that introduction to the X-Men in that iconic episode from the first show, he started to find the lighter side in life.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you find, and yeah, well, I mean, my first line in the very first Nightcrawler episode is like, he's just been chased around and he's hiding in the rafters and he goes, "Heartless fools, they know not what they do." He's so, like, I'm exaggerating it, but he's so morose and there's, "Look in your heart, Hedog," and all that stuff. And the next episode's, my mother abandoned me," and all this. So, oh, he's so sad. He's sad. That's great. But then this, like, episode 5 rolls around, and I go into the studio. "All right, I'm going to be this Nightcrawler again," and then I said at first, like, "Meine Freunde!" and all that stuff. And so this is where Meredith Lane comes in. So there's a whole little section that goes, "Meine Freunde," and ends up with, "I blame soap operas." So I did that all as one line, and then Meredith goes, "Actually, Adrian, what's happening is he's bouncing in and out of the scene." So that's when I found that little go, "Woo!" and all that kind of other stuff. And so I just kind of took on different positions as if I was, and it's really fun to see the animation. So it's so, and he's become he's still got the soulfulness, he's got the kindness, he's got the thoughtfulness, and he's got the playfulness, and now he brings out the swords. So super fun.
Lenore, you've been, so, what would be the word?
Careful.
So old this season. We've got Cap's shield thrown somewhere, maybe into Mount Rushmore or into Venus. Are we going for Thor's hammer in season 2? I mean,
She's worthy!
she is worthy. Absolutely. Come on, So you had an opportunity, you worked with Mystique in the original show for an amazing arc. You've faced off with Apocalypse. You've fought demons in the swamp for Gambit. What's been one of the most enjoyable scenes as Rogue throughout both series that you think back on?
I'd fight demons in the swamp for Gambit any day. Well, I mean, she's so much fun. Rogue is such a fun character to play. She's lovable, she's funny, she doesn't suffer fools gladly. But, she has a soft spot for her man, for Gambit. And she has to reach a point in X-Men 97 where she's given an opportunity to change the world and make it a better place for mutants. And also at the same time, she could be with somebody who she can have a physical relationship with. And so in episode 5, when she makes her decision, which some people would disagree with, and I know it upset a lot of fans that, oh my God, she's Gambit's girl, why is she fooling around with Magneto? But, I can understand why she would do what she did and why she would make the choice that she made. But one of my favorite moments is after, the scenes with Gambit when we're talking about how we feel about each other, but yet she's going,
yeah, but I can't touch you. I can't feel you. Your heart may beat for me, but I can't feel it. And then she goes with Magneto, and the dance up in the ceiling in the sky, is so beautiful. When they touch palm to palm, kind of like Romeo and Juliet, and then they end up kissing, and everybody's going, "Woo, she's kissing somebody." But when she pulls away from that, and everyone's expecting, including Magneto, her to say, "Well, I love you, I'll always be with you," or whatever. She actually says, "Thanks for the dance, sugar, but Remy was right. Some things are deeper than skin." And that, for me, is my favorite moment, because it means so much on so many different levels. True love is deeper than skin. And it doesn't matter even what we look like or the physicality, it's what's going on inside. So for me, that's one of my favorite moments so far.
What did Gene like about Scott? What was the attraction?
You say that like you don't understand. He's, I was always Team Cyclops. I have to say it. Wolverine's kind of the guy you keep around who has a motorcycle who your mother doesn't like, But Scott was kind of a keeper. And I just, all those things, kind of get down, Gene. I hear that in my dreams. So. But I wanted to say, those first scripts in that original series, it was like nothing I'd ever read before. It read more like a radio play. The romance with Scott, it was all of the emotion, it was all of these huge moral and ethical issues in a kid's cartoon. And it aimed up. And all these kids ended up absorbing lessons that they didn't even know they were absorbing. And so that's Larry and the Lewalds. It did such a fantastic job. And it was such an honor. Because most of the time, before that, I've been doing little kids' cartoons with, little voices. And then to find this, and it was just so different. And it was such a pleasure. And I knew nothing about the X-Men. So thank you to Larry and the Lewalds. That writing, it stands up 30 years later. It's incredible. And it's given it's given the new creators and the new shows something to aim for, and I think they've hit it, Thank God.
When we did the original series, we were like what I call lightning in a bottle between myself and the writers. Because we all wanted to write entertainment that would get ratings, but we also wanted to write it on two levels, that kids, for the demographics we were going for, which is 9 to 12, we would reach that audience, but we also wrote stuff that had a lot of subtext to it, that maybe once they got older, they would rewatch the shows and oh, I didn't realize this, I didn't realize that there's more going on that you saw, that you didn't realize at the beginning. And I think that really holds up today, when you watch the reruns, is that it's still entertaining. And one of the things that I enjoy the most hearing is that kids today, the kids were watching the shows with their parents, and that's really encouraging that, a cartoon, you're watching it with, father, son, and mother, and daughter, and all that stuff. That was very entertaining to know that we were successful in reaching the audiences that we did.
Yeah.
What I liked too, Larry, was you would storyboard and rework certain scenes in the episodes. One of the big ones for me was when Gambit's with Wolverine in the finale, and the Sentinel's eyes light up in the dark, and Wolverine shoves Gambit out, locks the door, and then has the fight, which you intercut with darkness, and then he appears in new spaces. That was incredibly creative. And then things like, we're talking about romances, and Beast fell in love with a ship. Oh yeah, that's a new kink. But what was cool is when the ship's defenses shut down and Rogue couldn't lift this door, Gambit was like, all right, and he just puts his hands to the wall and tries to use his explosive, energy, and you see it grow up, and then the ship counteracts it and shrinks it back down. Just things that you don't see, the level
Don't say the ship, it's just ship.
Oh, just ship.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things I was able to do. What happened, giving you a little quick backstory, is that a lot of the executives did not believe in the X-Men, okay? And we had a lot of political battles in the beginning, but myself and the writers, we won, but they backed off, and basically they let me become the showrunner for the whole show. So basically I took the show and made changes that I thought were worthy of making the show entertaining and accurate to the comic books. And so a lot of the little things like the Wolverine fighting the Sentinels in the darkness, I had an artist who do something that's very boring, and I was going, I only had so much time. It's like, what is it going to be? And suddenly the movie popped in my head. I just started drawing. It was a stream of consciousness, just making stuff up and trying to make it as exciting as I could, and also trying to challenge, me being like 7 years old, 9 years old, trying to put that into the show. And if I can make that little child in me get excited, I know that I'm on the right path, and hopefully it translates to all of you who would watch the show going, oh, that was great. Yeah. And so I did a lot of that, especially the first season was a lot of me.
Good.
When you look back, thank you. I know at one point you were working with upwards of 5 maybe animation houses overseas.
Oh, yeah.
So I know at one point I did see in the show Rogue had just an entire green arm and hand where they forgot to draw the glove on.
Yeah.
What was your most hilarious / tedious art screw up that you couldn't fix once it was turned in?
Well, they're still in the show. We them, but they're the ones that just popped in my head just now. It's like there's a scene in Mojo where they're in a ship and a hole gets blown into the side. I think it's the one with the Rogue. And we drew directional arrows for saying, okay, the debris goes this way out of the hole. When we got the film back, they animated the arrows. This way, with the debris. It was like, oh my God. So it is, or sometimes I'd have a character talking and like hearing the mouth goes over here, comes back again. There's color pops. There's, I think in, I saw. I don't know if they've corrected this, but when they did when they put the X-Men on the streaming service, they did it from the original negatives, and they had one scene you'll see that it pops on in and off, but there's a scene where there's like a slate, and it says cut frames here, and it's still in the show, and it pops by. It's like people go eagle eyes. They go, wait, if they back it up, and they post it on Twitter. It's like, yep, that was a mistake,
That's going to be on Larry's table for sale later tonight. So Kathy, you talk about Get Down Gene, and Matthew was talking about trusting your voice director. I just want to know who coerced you to give those deeply emotional, because Chris talked about the laser hits, but you have the psychic overload, which has become a meme on the internet. Oh yes, that thing. So
my son couldn't wait to show me the compilation video. When you're an actor standing in front of a microphone, you really trust the director for context, and at no time over the course of 5 years did anyone say to me, oh, by the way, Catherine, when you fall down, the noises you make sound a little sexual. Could you? Nobody ever said that. So, for years I've been sort of, people to say, well, Gene was always fainting. And yes, I remember watching, there was one scene, I happened to rewatch the show, and they were at Stonehenge, I think, and all this action was going down in the foreground, and you see a little Gene run in and just fall right down. Somebody runs over and picks her up and runs off stage with her. And so I've answered those questions for years, and I always said, well, Gene took on everybody's emotional baggage and everybody's pain, and she became overcome. And so finally I said to Larry, so I've been answering this question, and I want you to answer. So you gave an incredible answer, and I would like would you give that answer again as to why you had to get Gene out of the way?
at the time, Jean was the most powerful character in the ensemble, and Jean could end the episode and it wouldn't be in Act 2 and Act 3. She basically could take out a lot of characters that we had set up. So we had to downplay her powers just so we had some kind of drama going on. And then so that was one of the main things talking with the story editors, that that's why they did that. They powered you down a little bit just so we can have a story.
I wish I'd asked that question like 25 years ago.
We were able to, luckily, when we did the Phoenix, you became the top tier character of the series, with the Phoenix power. And when you were talking earlier, you reminded me of the scene that I created. It wasn't in the show, when Jean has to sacrifice herself to go into the sun.
Oh.
And then she's holding on to Scott, and you float up into the air and do that scene. That wasn't in the script.
Really?
Nope, made it up. Me.
Thank you. That's actually my personal favorite line of the whole first series, and it's because it's so Jean, right? She's going to what she thinks is her certain death, and all she can do is look around and talk about how beautiful what she sees when she says, "Oh, the light, it's so beautiful. Scott, I wish you could see it."
Yeah.
And that was just like, oh my God, that really got me.
It hit all of us too.
Yeah.
Tears in the cereal.
And then she didn't die.
Right.
She came back.
Yeah. Being the Phoenix, she's gonna come back. Yeah.
Alyson, what was the biggest fireworks blast you ever gave off in the first series? I know you shot Juggernaut in the face. You took down a couple Sentinels. You got creative. You hit like a sludge vat, and then the thing would pour down on the Sentinel. You would get creative.
We had to try. Ball Babe's got to try. No, she was always being inspired by the other ones around her, but she was usually ending up in the Sentinel's tentacle or something like that, still needing to be saved. Which is why I love that hopefully everybody's watched X-Men 97, that Jubilee finally got to have her do and kick Bastion's butt. So experimental in my time, but the current Jubilee gets to kick butt and do more damage than any of the other X-Men did to him. So I was pretty proud of her.
I was really scared of you when we were doing that because Alyson, she hates me talking about this. She was a teenager when we started doing it. And it's weird because now we're like almost the same age. I don't know how that works. But she was going through her goth mall stage. And so I remember standing beside her in some of the outfits. I was like genuinely frightened at this point. I know, she hates it when I...
But one thing I used to do with your character, though, is that I tried to always, throughout my series, show that Jubilee was fearless. She'll stand up against Juggernaut. She didn't care. She'll stand up and say what she had to do and stand up with her family. Because we tried to establish, I think in the last episode, that like when you want to join, Wolverine holds you back, and then you talk about how I wanted you now, I'm the family. And Wolverine agrees, but you were fearless and you were always part of the group.
But that was, there were so many different messages with X-Men. There always have been. And with Jubilee, it was very clear that we all go through body betrayal and body changes that we have no control over. But when you have a support system, you can do anything. And when you have role models that help you through that period of life, you can end up being anything. So that was what Jubilee represented for me when I was still a teenager going through like weird body stuff on national TV. It was great. Yeah, anyway.
A lot of these X-Men are outcasts, but it's interesting, Mr. Potter, that your character, when we got to see the tithing episode and going back to help your brother, and you get the ring and you're betrothed to Gabrielle, I believe. You see that
Belladonna,
thank you. Gambit left that life of thievery, and he's trying to be better. So he was the first. It was a very different backstory that he left that to be a better man. Can you talk about that episode and what it meant to you? And then, Kathy, we just talked about the memes, but I think Gambit, his hand with that wedding ring was shocked like 14 times in that episode. So you probably got 90% of your groans out right there.
Yeah, we did that script in New Orleans when we were there a couple of years ago. And, you're right. Yeah, with all of us. And I do remember it probably 10 or 12 times in that script I went,
Belladonna is not going to let it go.
But what was the question in there?
Of leaving the family, and he wants to be better.
Well, I mean, that's how I always interpreted Gambit, was that he just came from unfortunate circumstances. He understood where he came from, and he'd made a choice I think just by birth, by the way he was born, the way he was wired, that these were his people, but they were criminals. And I always play Gambit like he just wanted to be loved, but he didn't socially know how to reach the others. He was socially awkward, and he covered it all with his smooth and his bravado. And yet he ended up falling for somebody and finding out he couldn't fall for her. He couldn't love her, he couldn't touch her. And that episode, we find him back in the bayou, and Belladonna's trying to corner him into marriage, right? Is that the one we're talking about?
Happens to Adrian once a week.
And not for an instant in that entire episode did he not have Rogue on his mind.
Yeah.
And the writers just led us to believe that we might lose Gambit to the dark side this time.
Rogue was none too happy about it.
No. Rogue's the boss. She just lets Gambit think he is something.
And staying on
Wait a
that
second, am I talking about my wife, or am I talking about...
I want to talk about, Cable was introduced just as a time-traveling tough guy in the original, and in this series, we see him born. It's incredible. You see the...
Yeah, that was really fun for me because, be honest, first of all, I hear from a lot of people that you all imprinted on our voices from the original series. So we often hear that when you read the comics, you hear our voices. And I think one reason for that, and I think that probably won't happen with the new series, is because, well, personally, I did 75 episodes as Gambit. We did 100 episodes of the show. Well, the new show, it'll take us a long time to do 100 episodes, because we only do how many a year? We were doing 22 a season back then. And now we do 6 or 8.
Yeah, about 9.
Yeah, so.
9.
So it was you. I completely understand that. And the process was a lot faster and so on. So I think that's something I hear a lot of, and I think we all really appreciate it. I think the other thing I find interesting is that, as I said before, none of us really knew that it was imprinting on you and that it was all that successful. I don't even think it was deliberate on behalf of the studio or the producers. I think they were celebrating they had a hit on their hands, but I think they might have told us, but they didn't show us the love.
Right.
And we thought, we'll go in and do it. We're going to do another season. And, this went on for 5 years and beyond. And then 25 years later, as I say, when they want to put the band back together, this has been as powerful an experience for all of us to finally connect with all the people we're pretty sure we were connecting with, but didn't know for sure.
Yeah.
And now...
Cons at the...
Yes, at the cons. And now we're meeting all of you people. Frankly, we should have met 25 years ago. But your parents would have had to bring you.
Yeah, it might have been weird because you were all 10.
But it's a real thrill for me, and I think I speak for others. Like this is such a fascinating success story for all of us in this room, the X-Men. Great to be a big fan.
with Rogue and with Jean going into the sun. When Cable sees his mom right before her death in episode 5, and he just has that one line with her, the emotion you brought to that, it was so real. I was stunned that it could be so impactful.
Well, thank you. Once again, Lawrence Bain was a guy I'd worked with in Toronto that did Cable before, and I had no idea I was going to end up doing Cable. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for Lawrence, and I think he did an amazing job. And I hope I didn't hurt his feelings by doing this now. But the fact was, that backstory I started to pay attention to because I played Gambit before that. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to Cable. So yes, when I saw that in the early episodes, I actually was learning something because we don't get the story when we record this. I don't know what, I read my lines, but they don't say, and this is what happens for the rest of the episode. That's no. So I'm watching what's happening in that first 3 episodes when we were at the premiere. I'm like, well, that's me. I don't have parents. Well, no wonder. I'm good. I'm playing it right because he has no parents. He's a killer soldier who also needs love, and he's from a broken home. Wait a second, he's not as badass. He's a very interesting character, and I was suddenly really proud to be playing him. I didn't know much about him when I recorded the first couple episodes. And I can tell you, doing Gambit's voice was a lot easier on my voice than doing Cable. Because Gambit spoke from his diaphragm. He was always so smooth, huh, Shell? But Cable talks from his throat. And that hurts after a couple hours. So, yeah. I'll always miss Gambit. But
Yeah. Whereas at the premiere of the first 3 episodes, every episode came up, I wonder if this is the one right now.
I will add to your comment, Byron. I must say that the hardest scene for me to watch was at 5 when Cable comes and says, "Everybody out. They're coming to kill Gambit."
Yes.
That really was weird for me. Basically.
I know.
It was so successful, Emmy nominated for writing as well as Best Animated Series. It's incredible. Larry, you were there, Tito's and cranberry juice and some turkey, enjoying the reception. I was very jealous. I think we were doing a show that weekend too. But it's just been incredible to see your work honored, consulting on the new show, still doing the opening titles, which you drew over a weekend for the originals, and now new images you've introduced, and the fact that Nightcrawler's in the intro now, that's pretty great.
So, when that premiere happened, just my last session prior to that premiere and seeing the actual episodes, it had taken, 3 years before. We'd been working on it for 3 years. We couldn't talk about it. And it was taking so long that I was really suspect. I thought, it sucks. So I asked Meredith, I said, what's up? It sucks, right? And she said, no, it's going very well. I said, uh-huh. Well, it seems to be taking a long time. They keep pushing it off. And then that night we saw that premiere. And I went, we have a hit, and it's taken it up a notch. It's just that much better. And then I was just sitting back going, I'm a part of it. Geez, I'm just holding on for the ride. Because this new show is unbelievable. It really is. And we were all nervous a bit, right?
Yeah, we had no idea.
Well, then you should just thank Matthew for being the head of the school.
That's it.
That's really starting off right now, right? Magneto runs the school, you get an Emmy nomination. That's going to be the...
I've got very good news. First of all, Matthew has young children at home, and he said, I'm going to come out to Salt Lake. I don't want to miss this. This is his only day here. We're all going to be going back to our tables right now. There's a good lot of you we've seen. There's a good lot of you we'd love to see. We're going to stay another half an hour if you guys can make your way back down there. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question, we're happy to talk to you guys. We love you. Thank you for coming out. FanX.